Ladies and gentlemen, I am Yusril. It's the 17th of January, or at least it was when this footage was recorded, and this is the Tribble Timewarp. The focus for this episode is going to be the new Smallcraft arena queue. BranFlakes was apparently thinking along the same lines that I was an episode or two back, because he organised a couple of hour-long testing sessions and we got enough people to get a few decent matches in. I was able to attend the second session, and that's where this footage is coming from. He also live streamed it, so check out the STO Twitch channel for the recording of that. Mechanically, the queue works as advertised. It will try to set up a 5v5 with 10 players, but it will settle for a 4v4 with 8. If people leave after the queue does decide to pop a match, then it will just make the best of a bad job. In one case, we did actually end up with a 3v3. It also seems to prioritise players based on how long they've been in the queue, which makes sense and ensures that everyone gets a match eventually. For the moment, there's only one map and only one game mode, Cracked Planetoid and Team Deathmatch respectively. BranFlakes did mention in his stream of the event that the map choice was to facilitate testing, since it's already built for PvP and thus was easier to hook into the system. Hopefully we'll see more maps and game modes as this feature develops. Most of the rest of this video is going to be discussing balance points that I noted during the fights, so I should probably add a disclaimer here. I haven't seriously PvP'd since my Klingon days way back in Season 1 and the prologue. A lot of this is therefore even more personal opinion than usual, and if you aren't already taking it with a generous pinch of salt, then you should be. Smallcraft offer an interesting option for PvP for several reasons. Firstly, there's much less variation between top and bottom end hulls. Unlike capital ships, which have seen steady power creep since launch, and had massive variation in capabilities to begin with, compare a reconnaissance science vessel and a scimitar dreadnought for example, most small ships stick to the template of 2 forward weapons, 1 of each console, and a couple of ensign stations. Most of the variation will come from innate abilities and the bridge officer setup. Cryptic have resisted the temptation, thus far at least, to engage in the sort of power inflation that we've seen with capital ships, or at least the sheer scale of it, and it's to be hoped that this continues. Secondly, the fighting is a little less about alpha striking from cloak. While Smallcraft are more fragile than their big brothers, the reduction to 2 forward weapon slots also severely limits firepower, and quick kills now require multiple friendlies ganged up on a single hostile, encouraging cooperation and wing tactics rather than the cruder fire everything approach. The current balance problems therefore are summons and point defense consoles. Happily, Cryptic have already addressed the problem of the Armitage's point defense console, removing the damage bonus against Smallcraft when deployed in a shuttle. Since this was basically an I win button that dealt massive damage to everybody within range pre-nerf, then this was long overdue. It's still nasty to face now, but it's less of a you might as well just turn around and go home affair. Summons are a little trickier. Photonic Fleet already has a nerf in that if you are in a small craft, it will only summon small craft rather than capital ships. However, the Nimbus Pirate support and Fleet support abilities are presently unchanged. Nimbus support is self-limiting. The summoned ships warp out after 30 seconds or so regardless of what's going on. During that 30 seconds, of course, the opposing team does have to contend with 2 cruisers that they can't really fight in a shuttle, and a freighter with hazard emitters that does a pretty solid job of keeping anything nearby in one piece. Fleet support, of course, summons in a single capital ship, and it's often a heavy cruiser. As with the pirates, there's no real way to fight this in a shuttle, and the cruiser doesn't seem too inclined to warp out at the moment. In Team Deathmatch, this isn't a major issue. Federation cruisers in particular can be thought of as a no-go zone 5 kilometers in radius thanks to their tractor beam, and a very bad place to be within 10 kilometers courtesy of the extra firepower, so they are effectively area denial options. Happily, the map is rather larger than that, and the team on the receiving end can usually get out of range quickly and then move the fight somewhere else. It'll become more of an issue in territory control maps because, as noted, fleet support doesn't seem too inclined to leave at the moment, and having a ship, even an AI ship, that can't be readily disposed of guarding a control point does cause some issues. Similarly, if we ever have maps with choke points, say a fight in the wormhole perhaps, then a cruiser deployed there might result in a fight that was less than fun, as the opposing team either simply refused to engage and the team with the cruiser just refused to come out, or it turned into a meat grinder as they fed the beast in an effort to choke it. On the other hand, everyone can summon fleet support, and everyone at high levels should be able to call in the Nimbus Pirates. It's not as though the item required is hard to obtain. It's tempting, therefore, to leave things as they are, with the note that the best counter to rock in this case is another rock. But that's not necessarily good design, so I would put a time limit on fleet support. Say after 15 seconds with no combat it gets bored and warps out. Aside from that, at present, most of what we have seems to be mechanically sound. The queue certainly works as advertised based on what I've seen so far. It's mixing the factions correctly, and it is getting people properly deployed and set up into maps. Many of the balance issues in the metagame probably won't come into play until we have a much larger player base to work with, and that will ultimately mean once it hits holodeck and once people get over their distaste for PvP. However, in a game where the sheer power of capital ships, not to mention the balance problems inherent in both their variety and the lopsided distribution of cloaking devices, has put capital ship PvP into a rather bad position, it's good to see that Shuttle PvP is at the moment less about shiny toys and more about ability. Starship PvP might well be broken beyond hope, but Shuttle PvP appears on first evidence to be alive and well. Hopefully it'll stay that way. This is Yusril signing off on another Tribble Timewarp. Farewell!